next on stage, we are very lucky to have an incredible lineup of panelists who's gonna talk and hopefully answer a few questions about how we can weather the storm and go through and not just to 2025. To moderate this session, I'm incredibly happy to welcome on stage my dear friend and colleague, Kay Arutunyan, who is the General Manager of Counterpunch of Virtuo Studio. Kay.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Kay Arutunyan, General Manager of Counterpunch Studios, service provider, partner, and dare I say friend to many of you in the audience. Please bear with me. I lost my voice just getting here on Tuesday. My kids sent me over with some warm hugs and whatever this is. So I apologize. But we'll dive right in. So we're here today just to discuss what's happening in the industry and the storm that we're all experiencing. So in my experience, the video game industry has been pretty volatile, always, but also very resilient. And we saw some major highs during the pandemic when the world was going through a pretty tough time. But in the last 2 years, things have gotten a little bit unpredictable, a little bit, let's say, scary for some of us. And I have used this phrase and have heard this phrase been thrown around, survive to 2025, starting about 2024. As if 2025 was going to be this wonderful year, all our problems were going to go away. But here we are in quarter three, ending quarter three of 2025, and I would say that things are a little less predictable than ever. We have our news stories reading like a supervillain movie or the start of a zombie apocalypse. And, you know, everyone's asking, how are we going to get through this? So we came up with this panel idea. If we survive to 2025, how do we survive through 2025? And how are industry leaders doing it? And I wanted to invite our panel of distinguished leaders in the industry from various backgrounds to reflect on how we can get through what's happening in the current times. Let me please invite Toby, Dalma, Mark, and Michael to the stage. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for coming. I feel so grateful that you took time out of your busy, busy schedules to be here today with all of us. Let's just dive in and have you each introduce yourselves.
Toby Yao, VP of Global Production at That's No Moon Entertainment and a member of the XDS Advisory Committee.
I'm Dalma Bullock. I'm a founder of Level Up XDev Consulting. Prior to that, I was managing external development for Riot, for Legend of Runeterra. Prior to that, I was part of a team that spearheaded external development at EA, specifically on a Sims division. And I've been in the video game industry since mid-90s. And thank you so much for having us here.
I'm Mark Stevenson. I'm a producer and business development manager at Waterproof Studios. We're primarily a cinematic house working on AAA titles.
And I'm Michael Paul. I'm the external development manager at the Coalition studio here in Vancouver.
Thank you for coming. So let's dive right in. In your point of view, what is happening in the current industry? And also, like, what are some common themes that you're seeing?
Really tricky one. Like you said, we're coming off the highs of the pandemic, and there's a lot of new and very large investment coming into the industry, and maybe in my opinion, some of those folks didn't have quite the knowledge of how the industry works and the difficulties it is in kind of creating new projects, new studios, and now we're kind of seeing that probably overcorrection of that investment pulling out, and we're dealing with those waves and those aftershocks and seeing how we're all going to net out and kind of how probably needs to be some shifts in kind of potentially team sizes and structures, and obviously as we're all here as part of XDev folks, of just how we can work better together internally and externally.
can add to it, speaking with both game developers and service providers, I think the common theme is not knowing. This is the first time that no one really can predict next 6 months, let alone 2 years. So I see that funding is much more tighter and harder to get. I've seen that people, studios like big AAA studios that didn't really care as much about budgets now are very, very cautious of budgets. I see, service providers are just not knowing what to do, not knowing how to approach AI. So that's a big thing that is in our lives, and it's here to stay. So in one word, it's a lot of unpredictability right now that we are experiencing from what I've seen.
I think as an outsourcer, one thing I'm seeing with developers is they're putting more and more money into external development, into more outsourcers, and that kind of has to change your mentality of how you work with a developer, how you're going to be working with other external partners. And in the past, it might have been just direct with the developer the entire time. Now we're seeing models where we're having to just deal with more external companies, and that seems to be the push, from my point of view, where developers are going, is that their internal teams are getting smaller, their external teams are getting bigger.
I mean, I think a lot's been said here already, but just to piggyback on some of the comments, I think there's just been so many disruptive forces, and it's money, but also technologies like AI. I think in COVID, we also were dealing with kind of all the blockchain stuff going on, and so it's at least in my memory. So I've been in games since '97. It's never been this complicated. Like and I think it's a side effect of just where we are in terms of a mature industry, and the scale of our industry too, I think has had a major factor in all this.
Right, and that's a great segue into the next question. In our combined decades of experience, have you seen this happen before? Because sometimes I speak to people and they act like this is the first time they've never seen this happen, and I don't agree. So in our experience, have we seen this happen before, and how is this different?
I can speak to that. For all of us that been in an industry for a long time, this is not a new thing. It maybe is different, and I think it is different, but it is not new. Remember the. Oh my gosh, I'm spacing out. I've been talking too much today and past day, but the dot-com boom. Remember 2008, or when studios did not deliver games that made money, they scaled, they closed up. I was part of 3DO when I've seen a lot of layoffs before the ship went down. Every time the platform changed, we went through this. So this is definitely not new. We always recovered as an industry. And I really believe we will again. It might just look very different that how it was before, but this is not new. So this is definitely not a doomsday. That's what I believe.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment. I mean, I think the newness is in how long this is lasting, and also it's previously, like, it feels like we're targeted a bit. You know what I mean? Like this time we're being targeted, and where 2008 there was a global economic crisis going on, and this feels different in that way. And I was thinking about this before I came on, how it used to be I'd hear from a friend on the side that things were going on in the studio they were in, and here it's in the news, it's everywhere, and I think that's the other thing that I don't think it's overemphasizing what's going on, but we're finally hearing and seeing what's going on more broadly than we ever have before. So.
It also feels like there's more, AI is an existential threat to a lot of artists, and we don't really know what that means for them or for us as an outsourced partner. So that kind of external pressure in a way that's not just financial, but sort of like how is humanity changing and how are the ways we're going to work changing. So that sort of applies a different kind of pressure, I think, especially to labor.
I think prior to Lesson of Moon, I was with Sony PlayStation for 11 years, and it's probably 5-6 years ago, I was in a all hands, and John Layden was still the company at the time, and having kind of a real talk kind of about the state of things. And at those times I started PlayStation, PS3, a little bit rougher times, then PS4 started really taking off, and you kind of had the point of Sony, a huge corporate, between electronics and all these other things, and PlayStation, video games was always kind of number 4 or number 3 of kind of the profitability of the corporation. And then all of a sudden, when PS4 started taking off and we're getting close to PS5, all of a sudden we're number 1, and there's a way bigger radar, and that's something like the success of our industry has been great, and then even larger corporations getting involved and all the kind of mergers and acquisitions, but then it becomes a tougher reality on the red and the black of how things are doing and how trends and what are contributing to the bottom line, and is that spotlight. And then we're so much more connected now, like LinkedIn, Twitter, et cetera. News spreads so much fast, so it kind of makes it feel even bigger than it really, not that it isn't, but just like you said, that highlight, that spotlight of, wow, this is really going on for a long time, and we just haven't felt like there's been a big win lately.
Yeah, the ground hasn't come back under our feet yet.
Yeah.
And I want to add to something that Mark said. Remember in early 2000 that outsourcing was the buzzword, and we all were super scared of it, and we thought, oh my God, outsourcing is gonna take our jobs away. And look at us now. External development is I still think booming and will continue booming. And just like we may be thinking about AI the same way, oh my gosh, it's gonna replace me, and what am I gonna do? I'm sure things will change, and I think it's super important to just stay agile and go with the flow. AI is not leaving; it's already here. And how can we make it a positive experience? It's all up to us. I refuse to be scared of it. That's how I look at it.
That's a great stance.
Of course, part of me is like, oh my gosh. But I think it's normal. Change is hard most of the time. So just wanted to add to that. We've been in a similar situation before.
I think it's really important to understand that it's cyclical. We, as Counterpunch, were part of the Great Reconciliation. We happily joined Virtuous, which has been amazing for us. But there was a 10-year period before that, and I've taken out a line of credit on my house at least once during that 10-year period. So there's definitely been these cycles of peaks and valleys and stuff. Okay, so let's I've been hearing a lot of doom and gloom, and I really wanted this panel to be more upbeat because I think there's definitely something to look forward to. So what are some common themes you're seeing from both developers and service providers who are quote unquote weathering the storm? And then how are you seeing how service providers and developers are working together change?
Yeah, for me, I think it's noticing that the companies or teams that kind of stayed with the vision they had prior to the boom. Like they didn't necessarily, of course, everybody wants to take advantage of the work coming in and what, financing and all those things, but those that stayed true to their staffing plans, their growth strategy, through that seemed to, manage things better. They didn't find themselves with 100 more people than they thought they were going to have, and then have to figure out how to manage that reduction, for example. And so that was one thing I noticed. Yeah.
You know, I had a conversation with a few friends of mine here maybe some of them are here, and I asked them a question: how is your year? How are you guys doing? And on both sides, again, service providers and game developers. And I was actually shocked and super happy to hear, you know what, this year is one of the best years we had. I'm like, tell me more. I wanna hear all about it. And so, to your point, Michael, I think that the service providers that are intentional with approaching the possible clients or clients, I think, who are diversifying and perhaps have ability or already build ability to have clients beyond games, you know, movies, entertainment, commercials, marketing, whatnot, whatever. They are weathering the storm and even growing. I think number one thing that I see, relationships. Invest into relationships, because we are in, and I think it was always important, but I think it had never been as important as it is now. Because if I want to spend money, I'll spend it on a people I love working with, I trust. I understand their skill set, their talents, their capabilities. And same goes for game developers. I think the game developers that are open to have a true partnerships, to let go of the creativity control, like, hey, let's keep creativity in the house and let's outsource everything else. That model, I don't think no longer works. So if you are a game developer, I encourage you to trust your partners, because they will come up with a solution that you'll be blown away, and it happens over and over and over again. Don't be too stingy and you know, keeping things too close. That's what I think is helping the game developers and service providers to actually still thrive, even now.
Can I jump on that?
Yeah.
I 100% agree, and I think that if a developer is still, like, we have no choice. We have to give up creative. We can't. The projects are too big. What we're trying to do is way too big for us to possibly do that internally. And I think if anyone is hanging on to that dream of what it was like 10, 15 years ago in our industry, you better give it up quickly, because you're not going to be successful, I don't think.
I like what you said, Dalma, about sort of releasing some control, because, you know, as an outsourcer, we work with a whole variety of partners, and so we're seeing what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong, in a much more rapid succession than a developer might. And so we can actually bring a lot of solutions to a lot of problems, you know, because we've seen it before, or we've dealt with it before in a way that maybe the developer hasn't seen or has blinders on about. So I think one of the things that we've tried to do is really offer solutions to developers right off the hop, and help them, you know, make the right decisions about process, pipeline, creativity, how they review, and ensure that progress is made swiftly. So, you know, that's a really good point. Yeah.
I think a lot of it comes down to being very flexible and very nimble. You know, I think a lot of times having discussions with service providers, you need to sign something with 5 people, 10 people, 20 people, but like, it's super common, like, hey, I just need 1 or 2 people for a few months. Can you help here in engineering? But then, like, in a few months, I might need some animation, and just kind of being able to help augment that staff and kind of plug and play very much, and not having, you know, lucky at an independent studio, don't have a ton of burden of super long contracts or anything like that, but just being able to move and be very flexible and have partners, like you said, that can offer different solutions and bring their experience to the project, and is kind of, I think, hopefully a trend and something that can kind of help companies kind of stay afloat. both on the dev and service side.
Right, and hearing you guys, a word that comes up for me is trust, I think is really important right now. And with your diverse backgrounds as a service provider or a developer, for the developers, what can service providers do to gain your trust? And as a service provider, what are you doing to instill that trust in your developer? And I can kind of go first. For example, we really stay true to our niche. And so people know when they come for us, they're going to get a specific quality. Between all the different studios at Virtuous, there's real expertise. So we're not just selling a menu. It's expertise. And so clients have gotten to trust us. And speaking into, being involved in the creative level, being involved with the entire project, that trust exists. It took a long time, but it exists. So what can people do to gain your trust, and what are you doing to instill trust?
That's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be
Wild card.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to tell me what we're doing wrong.
Yeah.
We really try to do like kind of a monthly, like not post-mortem, but just like, hey, like let's put like the actual work down, like not your tasks. What could we do better? Like, or what are we not communicating? What are you seeing in our pipeline or our process or our communication that can make things better for you? And like, not be afraid, because we don't know what we don't know either. We're so heads down a lot of the time. It's hard sometimes with external partners to kind of have the more social conversations, especially like in a remote kind of world. It's, you're not at the water cooler working with folks, so it's kind of trying to build that in. So like, I don't take anything like that personal. Like our team is asking for that. What's going to make us work better together, and don't be afraid. And there's no like repercussions or anything. So to have the kind of that two-way communication, I think, is really key to that.
Can I add to it? Be genuine. People are smart. They see through the surface. And if you're genuine and your client expects you to deliver something, and you have gaps, be honest. A lot of times when I was working for game developers, right, or EA, we were super open to help our partners to succeed, because at the end we have the same goal and we want to win. I just feel that if you start hiding things, you lose the trust, and then what do you have left? So.
Yeah, I think like any relationship, transparency and communication, very huge. That builds trust. I think certainly for us at Waterproof, we really try to set up the project and ask all the questions that we can. And I think by poking holes or asking all these questions, clients tend to trust us more, because we're saying, well, what about this? What about that? How can we help with this? And I think that gives them a level of trust with our expertise and our experience. I'd also say that obviously repeat clients are tend to trust you more. So one of the themes I think post-COVID is really maintaining those repeat clients, reaching out to them as much as possible, making sure that they're serviced, and that that they know we're here, we're ready for whatever happens next.
I think, everything that everybody said is spot on. I think this thing about, as everybody was talking, I was thinking like, what's a mantra? What would that be? And I think this alignment on goals is maybe a good key thing to focus on, where, be transparent about what you're trying to, you're hoping to get out of the relationship, and just like I'm going to be transparent with you in terms of our production goals and what we need from you. And I think the biggest challenges we've had is when maybe people have been overly aggressive in terms of suggesting they can do work that maybe they're not ready to do, or they don't understand what that means to us when they say they can do this. And so these kind of misalignments have little things can lead to big trust issues. And I think that's somebody said it, I think yesterday in a panel, like it's easy. hard to gain and easy to lose, right? And so you need to be super sensitive. And again, I think as long as the goals are aligned and as long as you've got that transparency and open communication, I expect my partners should be able to come to me with anything. You know, like, oh, hey, I'm sorry, we said we were going to be able to do this, we can't, or it's when they don't. That's really when the big problems show up. So.
Right, if you have to call it out versus if they call it out for you.
Yeah, and I've been in situations where we're like, this doesn't look like it's going very, very well, and now it's like, no, everything's fine, and then a week later, it's not. And that's
Always trust your
terrifying.
gut.
Yeah.
One other thing I wanted to add in this space before we move on is I'm also seeing a big difference in how service providers are working together. And Mark, you and I are on this stage because we've been working together for a long time. I think that, if anyone's read the book Blue Ocean, Red Ocean, it's really important to find partners that you can work with. As the need for more XDev comes up, does anybody have anything to say about that? Is there something you prefer when several partners are working together versus if you have to manage them? Or anyone want to talk into that?
I love that idea. Like to me, it's super. I mean, I'm very pro figuring out how do we build. Because you can't. It's not necessarily one source can solve all of my problems. And so if I can find teams that are used to collaborating, and particularly things are getting so complex, and so what's even better is if they can take on some of that, managing that complexity and the dependencies between the teams. It just makes such a big difference. And so I'm super excited about that. And that's something like I bring up, like I've been bringing up a lot lately, is that exactly.
I can add to it. I literally, I think this is like a becoming trend because you have a studio service provider that already built the trust with the client, right? And that client wants to work with a service provider who does not have all the capabilities. Let's say it's an animation studio and they need more modelers, right? And I see it more and more often. So for all of you service providers, it is also important to know other service providers. They might be your, your collaborator, they might be your new source of income and partnership. Don't disregard that. It's also, I think it's gonna be more and more prevalent going forward, and it's already happening. I've seen it already happening. And of course, there's a challenge of figuring out how to work, when you subcontracting, basically. But I think it's all workable. So I think it's exciting.
And XDS, of course, is a great place to meet other external developers and build relationships with them and see what they're capable of and really learn from them in terms of how they approach the work and what sort of systems and communication that they utilize. We can all learn from each other. There's a lot of go-to people. Obviously Counterpunch is someone we always love to work with. So that makes everything a lot easier. Makes it easier for us to understand bids and just dealing with clients. And we know we have a solid partner to work with the client together. Like we won't have any issues. And for us, that's really critical to success.
Just take the drama out and
That's
all
right.
play nice.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, so keeping on the track of staying positive, let's all bring out our crystal balls. What can we look forward to? With everything that's happening, what can we look forward to?
Very excited about this. I see more and more women joining the video games and actually getting into leadership roles and starting their own companies. So of course I'm a bit biased, but I really am excited about that. So a lot of women are making this leap of faith, I'm one of them. So this transition is not always bad. It worked out for me, and and I see it's working out for other people, not only women, but I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this before. I feel like we are just moving towards more external development. So I think this industry for outsourcers is actually going to improve, and that there will be more opportunities as big publishers, big developers, sort of trim down, I guess, or get a bit smaller. That it does mean there's more people in the labor pool. Some of the very experienced people who we wouldn't normally have access to are now available, and it has made our teams stronger. So there is sort of some shift of labor, and I think the opportunities are kind of even greater for outsourced teams.
Yeah, I think it's also this thing about, I mean, there's still, the power dynamic will exist. The buyer-seller power dynamic is always going to exist. When I think though about the dynamic between individuals and whether you're an artist in a development studio versus an artist in a like at Waterproof or wherever, I think we're all developers now. Like, I think the complexity of what we're all doing is actually we're all game developers, and I think that's something that hasn't been the case, and so I do feel like I agree with what you said, Mark, around like it feels like, well, everybody talks about, we've got to crack AAA and figure out how to make smaller experiences, and we've had that conversation many, many, many times before, and we've not done it, and any technological improvement just seems to be like, okay, well now we can, do more, somewhere else, like the fidelity keeps going up, and so until we figure out, the episodic 1 hour release of your game or whatever that is, we're still, there's a huge volume of work that needs to be done, and that amount of work keeps growing, and the internal teams are not going to keep increasing in size, and so absolutely, I think there's opportunities for our partners, and but that thing of and yes, we lean into them as true peers. They are peers, and we rely on their expertise and what they bring to the table in terms of the skill sets and production management.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. Things are getting more and more complicated, but we are in a very fortunate time that engines like Unreal 5 is just providing for a free or very low cost such amazing tools to get such high fidelity kind of right out the box. There's a lot more opportunity to learn much quicker than in the past, and slowly kind of getting more towards standard processes, so it's easier to work on all these different projects, and hopefully for the future, if we are going to smaller teams with smaller experiences, these kind of more shared tools will make it much easier to get there, and for different providers, for people in school to just be able to learn much faster and much easier than they ever did before.
I think we can't ignore that there's always a benefit to change. Kind of speaking to the talent pool, it's obviously really difficult to lose your job, but also it is a new opportunity to find another place to work, and those opportunities are coming up. I'm seeing people coming up for work for hire and then going, finding something. I'm seeing, I can say now, almost as many announcements of new positions as needs work, and that might be an opportunity for artists out there to work on something different that they would not have the opportunity to work on if they were consistently doing the same thing. And it allows us, both developers and service providers, to have to adjust to this shakeup, which is a good thing, right? Because old habits die hard, but if you're forced, they die real easy, I think. So it's important to kind of look for the silver lining. And also, there was a great reconciliation in 2020, and all of these indie studios were kind of gobbled up by larger developers. And now a lot of really creative people are coming up needing work. So what new game or franchise or idea is going to be born during this time that we can't even, foretell right now? That's kind of what I'm excited about. Like, what new awesome thing is going to come up? Okay, we are kind of winding down here, so we'll just kind of wrap it up. And if we limit you, it doesn't have to be a word, but if we limit you the one piece of advice, and it could be something we've already said here, and obviously what we're saying here is not groundbreaking, but if enough people say it, it becomes a reality, right? So if we limit you to one piece of advice and you can't repeat what someone else said, so go first. How would you advise to weather the storm?
For me, I think I tell this to a lot of folks across different industries, it's just, you can only focus on what you can control. Like, yes, it's so easy to get absorbed in the news you read on social media and hearing, and kind of affects your mood, but like, it is a hard time, but you can only focus on yourself, and if it's, you know, continue your education, continue your learning on new skills or new technologies, or, you know, what you have for yourself, like, focus on yourself, your mental health, and, you know, do your best to be empathetic and passionate for everyone going through the situation, but you can't just let it weigh you down.
For me, yes, I totally am with Toby. Not to repeat, I think it's relationships. This is, and I said it already before, so I won't repeat myself, but super important. Keep at it, build new relationships, and many times business will follow. Don't start with the business, start with relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, you know, treat others as you want to be treated. And really when it comes to hiring and to, you know, working with other people, you know, you want to behave like a human. You know, you don't want to be the cold, faceless corporation. This is, you know, for us especially, it is in you know, 100% talent-led. So, you know, working with artists, making sure that they are respected and understood and heard is incredibly important, and that's certainly been our focus to survive through 25, is really just make sure that the people we surround ourselves and the people we work with, you know, get their due, and you know, work at a company that they feel comfortable with, and you know, are going to work there again, right? So we've had a lot of artists come back to Waterproof, and that's the kind of culture that we try to maintain.
So yeah, my bit of advice is, yeah, I guess I've been saying this lately a lot to suppliers I talk to, is like we've been focusing a lot on the, you know, what are the strengths of each of the studios we work with on a kind of a domain, or a, you know, we need the best 3D artists, we need the, you know, we want to see the best cinematics from your team, Mark, or whatever it is, and what we don't talk enough about is, again, the complexity now of the work, and the need for really solid production management skills. And so I can't emphasize enough, like, if you're going to invest in anything in your studio, make sure you have the best producers possible, because as we hand over kind of more ownership to the partners we work with, you know, we need those producers in place that are ready to carry and manage that work and communicate with us, and you know, and when going back to this, we're all game developers. I need everybody to act like game developers too. You know, like we need to take on that. Yes, you're part of the development team, and you have the same responsibilities that our producers have in terms of managing things through to the milestones, and eventually shipping the game. And so, yeah, that's where I would beg everybody to focus some attention.
They're the first line, right? They're the first line with your client.
Yeah, and the ones that often are the last to be thought about, and it's not a sexy skill. So.
Excuse me. But I made it through. So I would say flexibility is my biggest advice, both for developers and for service providers, because being set in your ways is just not going to cut it in these times. I think being flexible, making a plan, and being ready to change it when you see that it's not working is really important in staying around and being able to weather the storm.